Okay, we'll get started up again here. I just want to remind everybody, I got a number of emails from you this week. As I'd asked, I wanted to get your email addresses so I can be in touch with you. If you didn't send me your email, please do that. I think I just don't remember in my head. I know I got an email from you with your new email address or something, or the old, but yeah, someone had it. Yeah, you're right. So I got that. So I just say that because it's possible I could send out some homework assignments and you wouldn't get them if I didn't have your email address. But we'll hopefully assemble that this week and get going. Okay, so here's the thing. This is sort of a general thought or comment, but I know there's kind of a sort of a trite way to say it, but there can be like a critical process, you know, which is you look at something, you analyze it, and think about it, and then there's something that we might call a critical spirit, you know, which is where that's like maybe a demonic stronghold where I look at things and I find fault with them. And I think it's important that we wouldn't. I'm just thinking, Sean, are you in this class? Because you're not on my roster. You're welcome to be. Are you gonna add the course or?
Yeah, I just flew in last night.
Okay, great. Get that straightened out with you. I'm glad to have you here. Come, one of the front three rows. Okay. So get that straightened out with the office when you can. But you know, to have a critical spirit where I go into things and I find fault as like a way of life. Obviously, we don't want to get that going, and we really have to find the balance in this class, because in this course, like everything is like ripped open. It's all out in front of you, and we're trying to prepare you for some of these practical issues that you've run into. Those of you who have been on the road for a while, and that's a lot of us, you've been through these things, been through difficult times, and you're aware of some of the stresses that can arise in church life. But we talk about these things, and I need all of us to be mature and spiritual about it. But that's one of the benefits of this exercise we're doing, is I want to get you to ask questions and to think and to say things, because it's important that you understand. And I was thinking that, like in our society, like, Western civilization, or at least Americans don't think, they feel. You know what I'm saying? What's true, what I feel is true, And then so it's like the biggest wrong you can do somebody is to offend them. You made them feel bad. So someone's feelings become like, become a replacement for a conscience and for a replacement for truth. And you've offended me. And then what do I do about offense? Well, I apologize. I'm sorry I made you feel bad. And then that's as far as it goes. There's no sin, there's no nothing. And, we can take those decisions get made all the time, because we grew up in this culture, in this society, and we kind of overcome that by faith and by the Word of God. But I really want us to have critical, kind of linear, right and wrong, black and white thinking, where, A is not non-A, for those of you who have taken logic classes, as opposed to, A and non-A become together somehow. Which is sort of a different kind of thinking. So that's what we're doing here. We're going to walk through this. So the bylaws, they're sort of on the hard legal side. You could go on the mission field. You go to church in some country where the church doesn't own anything. The church isn't registered with the government. And you could have a beautiful, awesome ministry from God without ever writing bylaws. Okay? And some of you may have been in those churches, and those are spiritual, God-led things. But at the same time, even in those situations, we probably come up with certain ways of doing things, like, well, who makes this decision? And then, of course, as a church becomes registered with the government, as a church starts to own property, it's really like rubbing shoulders, it's in the world, but not of it, and conducting business. And these things become very important. And of course, just a church of this size and in operating in the legal structure, this is necessary. So the bylaws are one of like the three crucial documents of an organization, okay? And and we sort of done it a little bit backwards, but it's just because we went into that church structure. I wanted to kind of show it to you, but let me get my stylus out here. Okay. So, whoops. We'll start over again there. There we go. So, critical document number 2 is the bylaws. Okay? What's that? It's the second one. Okay, did you say the Bible? Yes, that's a critical document, but I'm on a different train of thought right now. Okay? Now, critical document number 1 is the charter, okay? Also known as the articles of organization, okay? And like I say, right now we're getting in sort of on the hard legal side, but I just want to get that in front of you right now. So what the charter does, that's like the birth certificate of the organization. It brings it into existence. That's what I go down in the state of Maryland, file a charter or an articles of organization. That creates the corporation, okay? So does it exist? Yes, okay? How does it operate? That's the bylaws. That defines how this organization makes decisions. So we know you just flew in. You're going to want to get notes from some of your classmates, last class, this class, to bring you up to speed, okay? But you will make it. You will survive, okay? So the bylaws is number 2. That's like, how do we operate? And then critical document number 3 is going to be the minutes, okay? And you probably have all heard this term before, but the minutes record the legal, the decisions that the corporation has made as defined in the bylaws, normally with a board or a series of boards like our organization have. Minutes talk about those board decisions, okay? And these minutes are very, very important because if you want to go back, what happened at that trustee meeting, what happened at that elders meeting, it doesn't matter what anybody says happened in that meeting. What matters is what the minutes of the meetings say, okay? And minutes normally are kind of like these, again, these cold sort of calculating documents. At such and such a time and place, a duly called meeting of the Board of Trustees of Greater Grace World Outreach occurred. Who was present, so the attendance, who was there, okay? And then what was voted upon. Normally, we're not going to spend too much time on this right now, but there's an order, the way the meetings are conducted. Usually it's in the form of something called a motion, or a proposal might be a better word, but it's a motion. So-and-so move that, the trustees approve, the budget of the church for the next fiscal year. That'd be like a motion. And then there's a vote, okay? And that, vote, 5-0, 4-1, 3-2, whatever. So in most boards operate according to majority vote, but that could be defined differently in the bylaws. Like if you wanted to say things only pass by 2/3 or something, you could write that in. But the votes are recorded, and then the meeting's closed, and then almost all organizations, at least in this country, minutes are certified by the secretary of the corporation. So when he signs the minutes and seals them, that's what makes them an official record of what happened, okay? So, you may be out on the mission field somewhere, and or in this country, you've got a church. Hey, the Board of Elders met, and, oh, yeah, we decided this. Oh, that's great, I'm glad we decided that. Where's the minutes, okay? Oh, I think someone took some notes there somewhere. It's like, okay, and that type of thing, you can live that way for 1, 5, 10 years. You can probably get away with it indefinitely, but the day will come when suddenly you will find yourself in deep, deep trouble. And usually the order it takes is this, is that, I'm in another corporation, nothing to do with this church right now, and this process is sort of happening right now, but here's how it goes. You've got maybe a pastor who's like a very, strong leader, charismatic guy. Everybody loves him. God's with him. He's out there making decisions. You've got, some boards that are backing him up, but he's out there doing things. Hey, God's leading us to do this, and oh, you guys, I know I should have asked you about this, but I really felt God was leading me to do this. Is that okay? Sure, Pastor, it's okay. But what happens in the board, or maybe in the church, but maybe on the board, there's an increasing anxiety level that's rising on the part of the board members and the other people in the church, maybe as represented by the board. And what's going on in their minds is like, wait a minute now. I'm not quite sure that was okay, but I don't want to be the person that's like standing in the way of the plan of God, And so this can go on for some time until one day someone finally says, I can't take it anymore. And then they start pulling out this document, waving it around, and then they convene the meeting, and then the board members find out what's going on, and it's like, the movie, the second time I've referenced a movie in this class. This is not a good track record. You've seen the movie Casablanca, where the guy's, shocked that gambling is going on in this establishment, and the board members, oh my gosh, we had no idea this was going on, How on earth did this happen? It happened because you didn't do your job for the last 5 years, So it's crucial that these meetings are happening, that they're being recorded, that things are being done decently and in order, and these minutes are that corporate record. Okay, so back in our offices, we've got minutes back to the beginning of time for this corporation. We can go back and find a paper trail for how decisions were made and why things happened. And probably, I don't want to say a failing, but something that can happen is decisions get made, but then people just forget about them. You know what I'm saying? Or we had this policy 3 years ago, and we forget about it, and then we're voting on a policy again that we already had, or we stop operating according to that policy. And again, that can get you in trouble. But we had a meeting recently. This was probably 2 meetings ago, Board of Trustees, and a certain subject came up. It had to do with missionaries getting insurance. And someone said, hey, we should, we definitely think that missionaries should have insurance. And then someone else said, hey, wait a minute, we already have this policy. We voted on this years ago, and Tom Coleman is not here tonight, but his dad, Pastor Bob, he's great. He comes in with a notebook and he remembers his stuff. I'm the secretary and I don't even remember anything. And he pulls it out and says, this is what's going on. But this, and of course, a lot of what I'm talking about applies to, American law, what goes on in the United States, and these things will all be modified overseas, because, different countries will have different types of laws. And of course, in some countries, the church is outlawed. You can't have a church, so nothing gets written down on paper because you don't want to get caught. But I think the principles are the same, okay? Bringing an organization into existence, let's define what it is, how are we going to operate, and then how are we going to record those decisions so we have like a legal, objective record of what happened. And I said it before probably twice, I'm going to say it for a third time. Doing things this way does not in any way mean that the right decisions are being made. It simply means that they're being made the right way, the way we've agreed we would make them. Okay, everybody see the difference? So there's nothing that protects you or me from, like carnal board members. You know what I'm saying? I've been in that situation also. People being, appointed to the board. It's like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? So nothing protects you from that. But given that you've got spiritual people, this brings things, like I say, just a decision-making process that we can agree on. So there's order in the church. And if you find yourself, and we've all found, I found myself doing this, but you find yourself, we know this should happen. How can we make it happen? Those guys don't agree. Those guys, how do we work around those guys to make something happen that should happen? That should be a huge flashing red or flashing yellow that something is desperately wrong here, And for better or for worse, we have the, sort of the time-honored tradition that if you're unhappy in a certain organization and you can't get things to go the way you want them to go, it comes, the people that are in charge, the boards are voting no, you want them to vote yes. Well, ultimately, you've got a decision to make. You can either live with that decision or you can pack your bags and leave, but you are kind of at the end of the line, especially in Greater Grace World Outreach, right? We're not a democracy here, right? We might take a congregational vote to get opinions about certain things and to know what people are thinking, but even with that, you got to be very careful how you pastor people because you want to be hearing from the body because, a lot of what we do is meet the needs of the body. You know what I'm saying? You might be a pastor and, maybe you're a single guy or something. You have no idea what what mothers are going through with small kids, and they bring the kids to church and the place is dirty and you're not in touch with it. You want to be hearing from those people so you can help them, right? So that's one aspect of it. But the other aspect of it is what, unleashing what we call the democratic spirit. Like, hey, this is my church. I've got a say in this, don't I? I have a right to give my opinion, and you do and you don't. Do you have a right to give your opinion? No. I mean, you have a line of communication to the leadership, right? You always have that line of communication. If you want to, send a letter to Pastor Schaller and tell him what you're thinking, or ask him, this doesn't look right to me. Not only a right, but a responsibility, led by the Holy Spirit, right? Led by the Holy Spirit, you have the responsibility to make that kind of communication, okay? But you don't have a right, and it's not that in the pastor, what's he doing? Does he have to listen to people? If he's wise, he will. He will be hearing from people. And I was actually, and I don't mean to drop names here because the job I have, I am in a weekly meeting, or it doesn't happen every week, but every 2 weeks with Pastor Schaller for like an hour or so, just because we cover certain business things of the church. So I don't want to represent that I'm Pastor Schaller's best buddy or he and I go windsurfing together. We don't. But I do have the privilege to sit with him from time to time. And I said to him, Pastor Schaller, one of the things I appreciate about you is that I can say something and I know you're not going to react. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I don't know what kind of home you grew up in, but, the home I grew up in, you're sitting at the dinner table like, oh my God, what's tonight going to be like? What sort of mood is my dad in tonight? Can I say anything, or, will I get in trouble for speaking up? And we don't want an atmosphere in the church where people can't speak. And that's one of the reasons why I do class participation tonight, is because I want you guys to learn how to speak and say this doesn't look right. So the pastor. Does he have to listen? Yeah, he has to be sensitive to the needs of the congregation, but he doesn't, what Pastor Schaller says, we don't want to give carnal people a forum. You know what I'm saying? Which is why you got to be real careful with rap sessions. You got 100 spiritual people and one person who, has, coming from left field, wants to grab the microphone and then he's going to lay it on everybody else. You got to be careful of that, And so I know I'm on a little bit of a different subject, but I want us to be thinking about these things because it's important. Now, while we're on this subject, I want to go back in here, and I thought I might talk about this thing right here. You're going to want to know that, okay? Yes, sir. Absolutely. Well, it really, like our bylaws here, you're going to have a board whose job it is to establish policies, okay? So in terms of these critical documents, the articles give birth to the organization, the bylaws talk about how it operates, and then the minutes record the operations, okay, or the activities or the decisions. So there's a board whose job it is to make policies. They'll have a vote, they'll establish the policy, and then that will be recorded in the minutes. So that's where that happens. Policies are formed that way. So,
where does the bylaw aspect come into play?
like, what are the bylaws?
Yeah.
No, it goes, and I'm going to just backtrack. I wish you'd been here a few hours ago. But no, what the bylaws do is they define who the decision makers are in the organization and how decisions are made, okay? So it sets up in our church, there's a board of elders, makes certain decisions, a board of trustees makes certain decisions. Normally, those bylaws are written very close to the birth of the organization. It's like day 2, those things get written up and voted on by the incorporators, and then they become sort of the law of the land. So they're like in the beginning, you know what I'm saying? After the Bible first, but then the articles, and then the bylaws, and then the minutes record, okay? So that's what that is. Now, yes, sir?
In what instances would bylaws be or have to be changed or revised?
Well, that would be a judgment call on the board that's charged with changing bylaws. In Greater Grace Church, the trustees are the ones who can change. The elders can't change the bylaws. Only the trustees can. The elders, of course, could veto any changes. Normally, bylaws are changed because of necessity, because in their use, we've found deficiencies in them, okay? And we've made changes according to that to correct those deficiencies, okay? There could be just an organization could say it's not just deficiencies, we just want to operate totally differently. You know what I'm saying? So maybe you're out on the mission field, you adopt these bylaws, and then, you know, the elders of the church, you know, say, you know what, there's churches out there that don't have 2 boards, they just have 1. I mean, I don't agree with it, but that group of guys might say, you know what, this is crazy, we don't need these 2 boards. We want just to have a board of elders, so they would ask the trustees to vote themselves out of existence and change the bylaws, you know. So it's just as need or philosophy, as need arises or philosophy changes. And I gave you the instance of this church where, because of the trauma some years ago, we changed, you know, we wrote extensively about how we get a new pastor. We also made a recent change. Anybody see in there where the pastor of the church is the chief executive officer? Anybody see that? Okay. We put that in there because that was never defined. You know what I'm saying? And we put that in there because, you know, we've always believed that, you know, Pastor Schaller, you know, he's in charge of this. He's in charge of the staff. He can hire and fire. He can do what any chief executive would do in an organization. That was not in there, you know. And it was like, oh my gosh. So, you know, the trustees had theoretically the power. You know, we could appoint somebody else to run the church. All sorts of bad things could happen that we did not think we would not want happening, so we made those changes. Okay? Now, I promised I wanted to hear from Ellen, okay? And you made a comment, and it had to do with, hope you can remember what you said, but this is before you got here, Sean, we as teams, we read all these bylaws and sort of picked them apart a little bit. So Ellen, when you were sitting here, you made a comment about, it had something to do with if decision's urgent, but can it really happen urgently because it needs to be, tell me what you were talking about there.
Yeah, because the question was, like, how could you make it, if the trustees have urgent business to conduct before a regular meeting, what are their options? And it seemed like the options that were given were not really, can't be processed quickly. Like, one of them was like the trustees can have a meeting 10 days prior to whenever they wanted it.
Right.
But then it wouldn't be actually accepted until the next monthly meeting.
The next regular scheduled meeting.
Yeah, so
right?
It's like, what's the purpose of having an urgent meeting if it's not?
Yeah, and we got the same thing with, just in general, you know, we've talked about how the elders can veto trustees' decisions, you know, and we've been talking about that, you know, among the leadership also, because it's like, well, I mean, so the trustees have a vote, but the elders can veto. Well, how long are we going to wait around for an elder's veto before we can actually do what we just voted on? You know what I'm saying? Do we wait a week or 2 weeks or 3 months later, the elders come back and veto. So I tend to agree with you that that could be better defined, because it's like, we can have an executive meeting, right? And then it needs to be ratified. Well, can we act on the decision in the meantime? So that's a good point. And again, like I say, when you're out there on the mission field writing your own bylaws, you need to be thinking this way and poking holes in your own documents ahead of time, not when it's too late and when it causes a controversy, So with the elders, what our trustees were doing for a long time, we were just voting, and then we started sending the minutes to the elders, and then we started sending the minutes to the elders on a timely basis, and then we started scheduling the elders meeting like after the trustees would meet on a Thursday, the elders would meet on the following Monday. So that's happening now. And then we asked the elders, guys, you need to record in your elders' minutes that you've reviewed the trustees' minutes and you decided not to veto them. We want that written down so we just have it on record that we can go ahead and do what we agreed we would do, knowing that you're not going to veto it. Does that make sense? So we've kind of put a process in place to plug some of the holes that you rightly are noticing. Okay? And again, I don't want to make you guys this is not all this course is about. It's about a lot more, but still, I'm glad we're getting into it. I'm glad we got intelligent people here tonight that can think about these things. And I've got this kind of cool homework assignment. I'm not going to reveal it just yet, but I'm excited about it. So that'll be coming to you. Can I ask you a question? Is your English good enough to read these things and know what's going on? You help him out? Okay. All right. So stay with us. Well, thank God you got a lovely wife who will help you. I'm glad about that. And I don't want to I don't want to leave you in the dust here on this course. Okay. So what we're going to do right now is I wanted to go to one more thing in here. And I just want to while we're on it, I wanted to make a comment. Okay? Blah, 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 blah.
I think for even native speakers, this English is kind of difficult for us to fully understand, because we can interpret it different ways.
Excellent point. Yeah, very good point. Very good point. Okay, so listen to this. Membership of the Board of Trustees. Members of the board show evidence of being dedicated, born-again Christians with a deep sense of spirituality and active love for the service of Christ. They got to be 21 years of age. They got to be in full agreement with the purposes and goals of the church, show an active interest in its operations, and be faithful. And then they got to freely subscribe to the statement of faith, believing without reservation in the infallibility and authority of the Scriptures, the Holy Bible. Are you happy about that, Pastor Javid? So far, so good. Okay, I'm going to make a statement now. You just heard all those qualifications it's very similar for elders and trustees. Here's what you don't want to do, gentlemen. This will save your life, okay? What I'm about to say now alone is worth the value of this course, okay? If you're a pastor out there, and you're, you've got, elders board, trustees board, do not minister to people by putting them on boards, okay? Do not minister to people by putting them on boards. All right, I'm going to say this a third time. Don't minister to people by putting them on boards, okay? These board members, they hold the keys. They hold the whole thing, okay? And if you take a gifted person who's a little bit carnal, is maybe in the church because, gee, should I join the church or should I join the Kiwanis Club? I like to help the homeless, all that type of stuff. People who have these problems, and you put them on a board, it takes a few of those people, and then you are in deep, deep trouble, okay? These are the people who will vote you out in a few years. These are the people who will stir up tremendous problems. These are the people who, instead of operating in a spirit of unity, right, will start waving around this document to obstruct things that they don't want to have just because they're unhappy, miserable people. So it's like, and I was in this, I wasn't one of these people, I don't think, but years ago I just saw it happening in another church I was in, It's like they were putting people on boards. I'm saying, no, wait a minute. I've never seen that person soul winning. What? How on earth can you make that person one of the spiritual leaders of the church because they're smart and they, and they, are articulate and they're interested and we want to get well-to-do people from the community into our church, so we're going to put them on a board. Okay, everybody understand what I'm saying here? So it's these are the guys that when the ship is sinking, you want them there, praying to God to keep the ship from sinking. You know what I'm saying? These are the ones who are the bottom line. They've got the keys to your organization. So please be careful. I'm not saying that you can't make, mistakes can happen and you can't recover from them, but just that's how you want to be thinking about these things. Okay? So, board membership. Number one, whoops. Not carnal people. Okay? And the same phrase would be don't, quote, minister by appointing to boards. Number two, don't pack the board with family members, okay? And again, if you're out there and you do this, we're probably not going to come and rebuke you, but there used to be an idea that to keep conspiracies from happening in a church, to keep me from being voted out, I'm going to put my wife and my children on the board or something like that, or my brother on the board. And our drift or recommendation would be, no, you want to put spiritual people on that board of directors, men who can be correcting you, can be holding you accountable, who can really help you bear the leadership of the church and give you wisdom and tell you things you don't want to hear. You need to be secure enough to have those type of people on your board. And a year ago, I guess I can name a name here. Of course, at Greater Grace, it's the elders that appoint trustees. So last year, we've had the same 4 or 5 guys on the board for some years now, and we went back to the elders and we said, geez, we request that you would appoint Pastor Jomi to the board, because I know Pastor Jomi, sharp guy, he'll ask the hard questions. So he's been on the board. He's raised a bunch of controversy, in some ways, maybe not controversy, but he's raised uncomfortable questions. And in a sense, it's a little bit hard for me. Just, oh my gosh, we always had peace, and now we got to deal with Pastor Jomi. But I'm just being a little bit public here. But this is, with the right spirit, this is exactly the type of people you want, because they're the ones who are going to keep your organization out of trouble, because they're going to see things that should be different, that we should be addressing. They're going to bring it up, and they're not going to leave it alone until we address it. And this is what you have to keep your church cooking. Okay, now we're going to leave this subject. We're going to come back to it from a different point of view further on down the road. But I think I want to get off of this right now. Okay, this is like the general organization of the church as it is reflected in some of the church documents and vice versa. There's going to be another thing that we hit when, I don't know, Grant Sutton is out planting a church in West Virginia somewhere about startup steps you take, you know what I'm saying? How a church, those initial steps it takes legally, but we're not there right now. This is just sort of a different point of view. I wanted to give you that overview. And we're going to take a break. It's 8:01. I think we're going to come back here at 8:15. Okay? And then we will get into part 3 tonight.